Bricks and Minifigs is your one-stop shop for all things Lego. Hit the link below to find a store near you.
My name is Steve Pulda. I'm from Wisconsin. This is my Spider-Verse build called What's Up Danger. This is based off of the two Spider-Verse animated movies. Last year at Brick World, I had a large city that I brought, and I thought, like, well, how am I going to top what I brought? Like, I'm into architecture and that kind of thing, and in Lego cities, it's kind of like the buildings are kind of the heroes, and the minifig scenes, at least for me, were secondary, so I wanted to flip that around for this one. So I thought, well, let's do something really dynamic with buildings and make it the background for an epic scene. So this is basically a canon event that's gone horribly wrong. There's buildings that are going off in different angles. I originally wanted to do like a city at a 45-degree angle, and I kind of got the prototype for this one, and like to do more was just like beyond my realm of knowledge. Like, this is the first build I've really worked with Technic. So once I figured out how to make this building, my son's name is Miles. So once he found out that Spider-Man's name is his name, like, that was it. Like, I had my idea. So that's kind of how this building kind of took shape.
I love that. Yeah. And the way you set this up is really cool too. So talk about kind of how this came together in your head in terms of the different buildings and how you would lay this out.
Sure. Originally, I wanted to just do 3 buildings in the front. I wanted to have, each building would have like a hero, a Spider-Man, and a villain fighting each other. I kind of paid homage to Spider-Man 2 with Tobey Maguire with the Daily Bugle in the middle. That's the kind of the scene where Aunt May was up with Doc Ock. This is the Green Goblin from the first Spider-Verse movie. That was one of the early on in the movie. That's where Spider-Man was battling him. So that was that building. And then the police station over on the right, that's actually loosely inspired by the video game Spider-Man. A lot of the police stations were that color scheme and that kind of style. So that's Spider-Gwen fighting the Renaissance vulture.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you want to talk about how they're built.
Yeah.
It's basically a very simple Technic frame down at the base, and then it's plated off, and then each floor of these this is all modular. All the floors are modular. So there's each building has 2 long Technic brick built rods that are attached to the base, and then I slide each floor over top of that, and then I pin them in. So I've earthquake tested it, so it's pretty strong. So yeah, that's kind of how that works. And then I can actually build both of the leaning buildings completely and have just the first floor of the bugle keep the counterweight. Mm-hmm. So yeah, as far as like counterweight goes, the bugle is completely overkill, but it's not gonna fall over or anything like that. So there's no glue involved. It's 100% Lego.
One thing that's so cool about this is when you're kind of first walking up, you think it is just like a normal city at first, and then you start to see all of the crazy colored pieces underneath there, and you realize what's happening.
Yeah. Originally, I had just one of the basic black border around. A lot of mocks do that. Mm-hmm. I was at work one day, and I thought, how can I make this more interesting? And the glitch kind of came to me from the first one. Anything that doesn't belong in the Spider-Verse in that universe glitches. So everything in my mock that doesn't belong in the universe has the magenta and the lime green and all that. So there are quite a few different scenes in the mock that, like back on that coral building, there's a blue bird back there instead of the white bird. That bird doesn't belong there. There's quite a few different Spider-Man that are kind of hanging off buildings. They're all glitching too. The Spider-Man up at the top, the tree that doesn't belong there. So there's a lot of that kind of stuff in there. Yeah, and then each of the Daily Bugle is basically like 7 vignettes just stacked on top. So I wanted to like have a dynamic pose with the buildings, and then that would kind of get your attention, and hopefully, that would make you want to stop and actually see what was actually going on the inside. So this is actually my first mock also that I've lit. So that was also a learning experience. So I really wanted to make sure that this time around this year that this mock was like, it was story driven.
Yeah. If you can, maybe take us through some of the floors here and some of the details you've been able to include in there. I like all the windows so you can appreciate a lot of what you put in there.
Yeah. So in my mind, anything is possible in the Spider-Verse. I've got different theme Spider-Man. On the first floor lobby, it's more basic. There's every Marvel movie has a Stanley cameo. So Stanley is actually he's the security guard behind the desk with the hat on. So that was basically that floor. That was nothing too spectacular. The second floor of the Bugle, that's a modified version of the actual Lego Bugle set. The third floor is probably one of my favorites. It's Doctor Strange, and he's actually teleporting into the 66 Enterprise set. So you've got Captain Kirk. He's back there, and Spidey's at the con. He's navigating the Enterprise, and then on the next floor up, that's just the Office set. I thought it'd be cool to have Dunder Mifflin be part of the Spider-Verse. The floor after that is another one of my favorite scenes. In the second movie, there's a scene where Miles Morales he's in Spider's side and he's running away from everybody, and there's a big chase scene, and he breaks through the wall of a therapy session, and so there's like Spider Horses in there, and Johnny Thunder Spider-Man's in there, another just like a cross theme kind of thing with Spider-Verse. There were actually three of my friends that helped out with donating parts for the mock. So I decided to put all of their sig figs in my mock to kind of honor them. The guy that's being in therapy session, being therapied too, that's Brett Hooper. You can find him at Brett Lego on Instagram. The woman who is being kidnapped by Doc Ock, that's Heather's Bricks. She helped out with some of the clips that I needed to make the Daily Bugle signage. And then back here, that's my friend Aubrey. She goes by Maktura on Instagram. She helped out with a lot of the Friends colored plates that I needed for the infrastructure. There's a lot of stuff you can't see, but it's all there. Mm-hmm. So I just thought that was just a cool way to honor their help, even though it was small, but it was a big deal for me.
Absolutely, and this is the perfect build because you've got so many references already, mm-hmm. So it's fun just to include other builders in there.
Yeah, and then so the floor above the one we just left off on, that's J. Jonah Jameson's podcast room. I just thought that was a cool way to kind of throw him back into the mock, and he's a big part of Spider-Man. And then the last floor, which I left dark on purpose, and I probably should have done something a little bit different, because there's actually a scene where that's J. Jonah Jameson's office, and Black Cat is in there, and she's like thieving. So when the lights are out, that wall between the office and the receptionist's room is just windows, and the light from the receptionist room actually shines in, and it tells the story better than it does when the lights are on. So hindsight, I probably could change it, but that's kind of how I was thinking about storytelling. So
yeah.
And
then what was your approach to these buildings in the background there?
At first I didn't want to have buildings, but then I thought if people are going to be looking at this, maybe it would be a way to kind of create a backdrop so people wouldn't be looking past the mock, and kind of set kind of just like a city skyline. So these are a lot of buildings from my city. I'm a city guy. That's kind of how I got started. So the first floors are kind of like modifications of sets, heavily modified, and then the rest of the floors are all just like custom. I'm a pick a brick wall fiend, so I like getting parts, and I don't use a lot of them for years, but then I'll get inspired by some kind of architectural thing. I'm always thinking in Lego when I'm doing stuff. So yeah, the two on the right, there are scenes in the first floor, but they're really hard to see. But yeah, the tan one is loosely based on the police modular. Mm-hmm. It's heavily modified, but then the one on the right, that's kind of like the fourth iteration. It's called the Busty Crustacean. I used the shrimp sign from the Shrimp Shack Attack set. That was the hidden side. I really fell in love with that set when I first saw it, and so I really wanted to have that sign be part of the building. So this is my 4th version of that. But yeah, the lighting is also my first mock that I've lit. So I got some really cheap lights from Amazon, and they're all daisy chained together, but I bought a pack of cool and a pack of warm, and then each floor would either be warm or cold, cool lights. And then the windows, I work at a sign shop, so I'm able to get translucent white vinyl. So I put translucent white vinyl on every single window, and there's 2 different colors of window. There's just the normal clear, and then there's the trans brown or the trans black. So depending on which light is shining through which window, you can actually get 4 different colored windows, which I thought was a cool way, because like buildings, no one has the same lights and the same light bulbs and that kind of thing. So it kind of gives it a little bit of texture and diversity. So yeah.
I love that level of detail. It's subtle, but when you really start to look at all the buildings, you can appreciate that, and it stands out really nicely. So now I know you've had this at Brick World Chicago, and then you brought it all the way down here to Brick Rodeo in Austin. How does this build travel for you? How's that process been?
Very good, actually. Wisconsin to Texas is like at least a 20-hour drive. Like I said, all these buildings, all the floors are modular, so I can fit everything into 5 totes. The bugle itself, I actually have modular connectors between the floors, so there are no wires to worry about. So I can basically take the 3 top floors, stick it in a crate with the 3 bottom floors, and that's just 1 tote right there. So it's really easy to set up. You'd think the biggest building would take the longest, but the biggest building is actually the easiest one to take apart. Everything else is daisy chained, so I have to fish my hand through the floors, and it's a process. But yeah.
Well, the whole layout turned out fantastic. So thank you for bringing this down here to Brick Rodeo, and thanks for taking us through everything. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.